3 hour racing will make up this 6th round of the FIA GT Championship, and they are away at Zolder. The light goes green. Pole position for the Lister. Can he hold it going into turn 1? Mark Duez already pushing up the inside. He may have got the drop on Mike Hazeman. Wolfgang Kaufmann, number 3. Jürgen von Gartzen, number 5. The Porsches side by side as they go round this tight series of corners around the lake. Lister from Belmondo, Viper from Carsport, Holland, Viper. And that is the order as they come out of the first corner. Very close together and nose to tail now, orderly formation. Going towards the first of the chicanes. Fast along the back here behind the pits. Julian Bailey ahead of Mark Duez, Mike Hazeman, Cor Euser, Tiff Needell, number 50, Vincent Voss in the number 12 Viper, and then Wolfgang Kaufmann, Jürgen von Gartzen, the Porsche, Jürgen von Gartzen, the Porsche is looking good, and Raffaele Sangriolo in the number 21 Viper. Luca Riccitelli heads up NGT. You'll catch a glimpse of the blue Red Bull car in the background. He's still just ahead of Christophe Bouchou, who followed him off the line, did not get past him. But it's all happening up the front. We're on board with Michel Neugarten, following his teammate Magnus Wallander. 14th and 15th positions overall, but they're 4th and 5th in this close fought NGT class. And following the red Ferrari of Jean-Denis Delatraz as Mark Duez thinks about this one. He wants to get past, he thinks he can pass the Lister. Prime overtaking spot at the end of the straight coming into that final chicane. Very slow entry, good for overtaking, but it didn't happen. And is he going to try again at the end of the front straight? This is overtaking territory as well. Cor Euser thinks so too. And if he doesn't know his way around this circuit, then probably nobody does. But Julian Bailey under pressure from Mark Duez. Mike Hazeman under pressure from Cor Euser, who is under pressure from Tiff Needell, who is under pressure from the number 11, the number 12, Vincent Voss. So it's Belmondo Vipers crowding the front, but it is still Julian Bailey resisting as Duez tries, Hazeman tries, close together, nose to tail. Well, they haven't separated yet, they're staying together, and this is going to be very tough if it keeps up like this for very much longer. Very hot, although it's overcast, it's humid and hot at Zolder. It won't be comfortable in the cockpits of any of these cars. Julian Bailey, Mark Duez, Mike Hazeman, Cor Euser, the leading quartet pulling away slightly from number 15, the second of the Listers. That's Tiff Needell with Vincent Voss breathing down his neck. Cor Euser using every inch of this circuit, but you have to when your car's that wide. The Marcos is flat and wide. Lister, Belmondo Viper, Carsport, Holland Viper, and Marcos. You can see the heat haze coming off the circuit for yourself, and you can see how grey it is overhead. There's a storm brewing in the skies over Zolder, and there may well be a storm brewing here on track. Mike Hazeman is in a bit of a hurry to hustle past Mark Duez. And it looks as though Julian Bailey might just be creeping away from Duez, might just be leaving the Belmondo Viper a little bit behind. That would certainly make his life a little bit easier if he can make the break. They're going to come into traffic fairly quickly. They tend to catch up the tail end cars fairly swiftly in this series, and he doesn't want to arrive at the last of the back markers with this lot breathing down his neck. Oh, he's looking like he's in a hurry. Here's a man who's in a hurry. We're back on board with Michel Neugarten, following his teammate, who is going past Mauro Casadei in the number 8 Habertha Porsche. And now Neugarten wants to go as well. He's being held up here. You can see how much quicker the newer cars are through the twisty bits. The suspension is a revelation by comparison to the old GT2 cars, and that's the number 16 Ferrari. That's Jean-Denis Delatraz, and that looks as though he's slowing down, coming up towards the pit entrance at the end of the lap, and it looks as though he may well be on his way in. He may well be calling in. He'll go straight on there as they nip through the chicane. And watch the GT2 car pull away sheer speed, it pulls away from the NGT car. Race leader Julian Bailey with a bit of a gap, car's length perhaps, over Mark Duez, then Hazeman, and then Cor Oyser. The V8 engine in the Marcos never sounds as if it's working very hard, but the Ferrari engine has obviously been working too hard. That is steam. Look at the way it's misting up the windows. It's had an overheating problem since day one, and they worked so hard to cure it. And although the rules say that a team can homologate a car and take it almost out of the showroom and bring it to the racetrack, of course, to be competitive, you don't do anything of the sort. And that explains why it is just a little bit problematic getting them properly sorted to go racing. Properly sorted here, though. A little bit of a gap between second and third place now. Bailey and Duez pulling away from Hazeman and Oyser, and it's tempting to wonder whether or not Mike Hazeman is slowing down. It is. Look at the front of the Ferrari engine, they're looking at the drive belts, it's overheating again, it's the same problem, and they really haven't solved it yet despite all the effort they've put in. But to go back to the question, is Mike Hazeman slowing? Does he have a problem? Cor Oyser starting to look a little bit agitated behind him. Cor Oyser starting to look like a man who could go quicker if there wasn't an orange Viper in his way. Watch the body language of this Marcos through the turns. He is anxious to get on with it. He seems to want to come out of the corners harder and faster than Hazeman, and it's hard to guess why. Lister and Belmondo Viper here, and here comes the Marcos. Well, there you are, he did get out of the corner better, and he has got past, so he was definitely being held up by the orange Viper. Now let's see if he can pull away from Mike Hazeman. He's trying his best, but that's not the way to get the drive out of that chicane. Going to stay off the rumble strips. He can lose traction there and lose the drive, and there's a long straight then in front of you, and you don't want that to happen. So a little bit over anxious with the throttle there perhaps, Cor Oyser, but let's see if he can pull away from Mike Hazeman in time. We're back on board in the number 51 car, still following number 8 Porsche, and if you look ahead, that flash of yellow is the teammate to this car. Just up the road from us is Magnus Wallander. Take plenty of curb through the chicane and get on it hard over the crest, past the pits. Long, fast straights, keeping over to the right, ready for this left-hander. It is quite a fast corner. It's a big corner here, and that looks like Nico Wirth in trouble. It is going very slowly indeed, in fact pulling off. So that looks as though something mechanical has gone wrong with that car. Just as he's gone past the pit lane entrance, here's the NGT leader with second place right behind him, Luca Riccitelli and Christophe Bouchy. These two really have brought this series alive in the last few races. We've seen some tremendous NGT stuff, perhaps the most memorable at Monza between Neugarten and I think it was Steve O'Rourke in the number 56 car at the time, might have been Tim Sugden. And that is Jürgen von Gartzen in the Conrad Porsche in the sin bin for jumping the start. A 10-second stop-to-go penalty. He came in from 8th position. This is costing him time and position. Away he goes. Well, that's the penalty for being a bit over-eager on the start line. Lister, upper bun, the tail enders. Big gap now back to Mark Duez. This is exactly what Julian Bailey wanted, and not what Mark Duez wanted at all, because he's also got Cor Oyser right behind him. Oyser now is hunting scalps. He's done Hazeman and he's looking for Mark Duez. Not sure where he's going to find it, but the traffic might well influence it. It's just a question of luck. It's how you come upon it that determines the outcome. There's nothing a driver can do except deal with it as it arrives. And the trick, as always, is to keep going. Don't lose your momentum, don't slow, just go past as quickly as you can. Second of the Chirot Porsches, Proton Porsche there. They had a good outing at the Nürburgring in another championship and actually ran very well and consistently all the way to the end. So things looking up perhaps for Gerald Reed. And look at this, Mark Duez stuck in this traffic. The other guys are racing, of course, they're having their own battles, and although they'll be seeing blue flags, they won't move over until they're sure it won't hurt what they're doing, and they're entitled to do that and just that. And you'll notice if you get a shot in the background, if you can see far enough down the straight, we've lost the number 15 Lister, which has had a little spin and may well have some kind of a problem. No worries up front for number 14, except that Mark Duez is now just about to take the last of the traffic between him and Julian Bailey and may well come after him. But at the moment, Julian Bailey's had a good run through and he's got plenty of space now over second place. There goes Coroiser staying right on the tail of Mark Duez. So Duez has got a problem because he's got to deal with the Marcos behind him, and that means watching your mirrors when you want to be watching your turn-in points, your braking points and everything else, and getting the laps just right to reel in the car in front. No problems for Julian Bailey. And that gap, is it getting larger? There does seem to be a lot more tarmac before you get the yellow Belmondo Viper in the picture. And the question now is whether or not Coroiser can catch and pass Mark Duez. That really would be something else if he can get on with the hunt. He's probably not as fast as the Lister on the straights, but he might well be able to hustle the Marcos through the corners a little better. Coroiser, of course, knows this circuit very well indeed, and he will be able to make use of that knowledge. He knows just where to take chances and just where not to. One of the problems at Zolder, apart from the fact that it is tight and twisty, is that it's also very slippery. There are places when being on the gas early doesn't do you any favours at all, and Coroiser will know all about all of those. So he'll be making good use of that as he does his best to get on terms with Mark Duez. But it's beginning to look as though he's dropping back from that one. And it's beginning to look as though Mike Hazeman is closing in again. We've seen the tyres on the Marcos light up a couple of times. It's done a little bit of smoky braking. And it may well be that he is running out of options. And it may well be that he's running out of tyres. He may have flat spotted. He may have done anything to his tyres, but it does look as though he is being caught again. In fact, he is being caught by Mike Hazeman. Well, hard to say with the naked eye, but it's beginning to look as though Mark Duez is no longer being pressured by Coroiser. And in fact, Oiser is the man coming under pressure from behind. The traffic may change all that as they go through it, though. But the Porsche's keeping off the line. Duez putting a car between him and Oiser. That's what he wanted to do through here. Just try and slow Oiser on the exit and get a good drive up this front straight. And again, another car goes between them. Hazeman right on the tail of the Marcos, though. And Coroiser, I think, has dropped off the pace. I think he may just have lost the edge now that he had in the early laps, and he may well be having a few problems keeping the car pointing in the right direction all the time. Nothing very serious, just enough to knock a couple of tenths off your lap time. That's all it takes, and before you know it, you've got an orange Viper breathing down your neck, and that's exactly what he's got at the moment. Bailey in the clear, and the gap is definitely growing back to Duez. Oiser's still there, though. He's not really dropping away. He's lost a little bit of time, made it up again. Now they're through the traffic on clear laps. He seems to be doing a little bit better than he was. So it may well just have been the traffic that Duez was able to get through it a little bit more cleanly, but he's definitely got Hazeman close behind him now. So Hazeman pushing to get back into third place. And this battle has been going on between these three, if you like, ever since the beginning of the race. Bailey's made the break. Duez is trying to go with him, but he's not quite staying on the pace of the Lister. And Coroiser has made this brave lunge up towards third, but it looks increasingly as though he won't be able to hang on to it for very much longer. cloud of smoke there as I think the Lister breaks into turn 1. So Julian Bailey still working hard to drive away from everybody else. Noiser, you can see, isn't able to go after Duez, and he's not able to defend for very much longer. He's going to lose that third place. Hazeman's now just really sizing it up and deciding when and where. But he will be doing it very, very shortly. Back on board. Two Pennzoil cars in the chicane at Villeneuve, going down the ends. Oh, and they are so close. They've touched, and it's a little bit of a spin. That was Constantino Bertuzzi who took one of the Pennzoil cars in the door. You have to say there wasn't an awful lot of room there for that one. And Magnus Wallander tried to squeeze through and didn't make it. And I think it was Constantino Bertuzzi, number 55, who paid the price. Still the same here. Second, third and fourth haven't changed. There's the gap back to second from the number 14 Lister. And Oiser still holding on. And more traffic coming up, and that may well again change the running order here. Oiser just a little bit over to the left there, just defending his line into that corner very nicely. It's kind of a middle line through there, and there was a chance that Hazeman could have dived up the inside of him. That is what happened to the number 50 Porsche in the pits for repair after that clash in the chicane at Villeneuve. That's cost position, and it continues, rejoins the race. The Marcos number 19 Cor Oiser going very slowly on track now, and it looks as though he does have a problem. There's smoke from underneath the car, and it may well be that they have asked too much from it. And behind the Ferrari of Philly Ballio, jumping up and down. Well, the Ferrari, new to the series, not one of the quickest cars here, but as you can see, Philly Ballio getting very frustrated because he could pass the Marcos, and that does mean that Oiser is on his way back to the pits, and it looks too as if Vincent Voss is coming into the pits. Boris de Richburg crosses the pit lane, waiting to take his turn in the number 12 Viper. Nobody's allowed to touch the car while the fuel is going in, so the mechanics have to stand in the pit lane and wait before they can fill it. The drivers change places though. That was number 77, you just caught a glimpse of him there. That was the NGT leader. This is the ongoing battle in GT2. This is de Richburg coming out after the pit stop with new tyres and fuel. This is Lister number 15, this is Tiff Needell, and he seems to be going slowly as well because he's just been passed by one of the NGT Porsches, and it looks as though Marcos and Lister have got problems of their own. Here's Alio, and that's his teammate Batty Predliasco. That's Magnus Wallander. And this is Wolfgang Kaufmann in the number 3 Porsche, who is about to benefit not only from the pit stops, which will promote him slightly, but from the fact that other people seem to be running into trouble. Marcos slowing and heading for the pits. Tiffany Dell in the Lister slowing and heading for the pits. And the crew looking into the wheeled arches. It looks as though it could be a brake problem for Needell. Wallander trying to catch up, had a big off earlier on, or a big touch, shall we say, earlier on. And Wolfgang Kaufmann rejoicing in the fact that these pit stops are promoting him further and further up the leaderboard. In comes Marc Duez. Paul Belmondo waiting to take over the number 11 car. Wolfgang Kaufmann, number 3, the Porsche, I think, is now 4th. It's the number 14 Lister in the lead. And this car's come in, the 12 car's gone back out there. Hazeman is still out there. I think that puts Wolfgang Kaufmann into 4th place because the Marcos has dropped right off the leaderboard. Here's the man on top of it though. This is Julian Bailey in the number 14 Lister, clear air. His rivals, shall we say, are in the pits or have been in. Julian Bailey has yet to stop, and the number 11 car gets fuel and now tyres. Paul Belmondo waiting to rejoin. Here comes Julian Bailey, nailing another lap if he can. Well, there is the Belmondo car with Paul Belmondo at the wheel, back out on track after his pit stop. Race leader Julian Bailey has yet to stop. I was about to say that Mike Hazeman has yet to stop, but here comes the number 25 car into the pit lane. David Hart waiting to take over from Mike Hazeman. Fuel going in while the drivers change. The mechanics not allowed to touch the car until the fuel rig has been pulled clear. So it's all changed while the pit stops are happening, and as long as nobody makes a mistake in the pit stops, it'll all settle down again afterwards. So the number 11 Viper is out there with 25 rejoining behind it, still in third place. So it's 14, 11, 25 and 12. It's no longer 14 and 11 because here is Julian Bailey in for his pit stop. Now, providing nothing goes wrong in this stop, the team will turn the car around and they will put Jamie Campbell-Walter back out on track and back in the lead. There have been problems before in pit stops for everybody. Lister have had their fair share of them, and they've had, oh dear, and they're having their fair share of them now. A spin at the last corner for the number 15 car. That's Springer just turning it round at the last corner, and I think that's the second time he's had a problem this lap. It's his first really big spin, but he's been having problems. None for David Hart, who is out on track in 25. And that looks like a Porsche wheel. It is a Porsche wheel. It's Wolfgang Kaufmann's Porsche, number 3, into the pits. The drivers have changed. Kaufmann out and Bert Longin is in. Local specialist, races in Bell Car here, knows this circuit backwards. Let's hope he doesn't have to prove that, but hopefully he's going to help the Freisinger team boost their position in this middle stint. Out he goes on to track. The race leader is, oh, it's crashed. That's David Hart in the barriers. Oh dear, that's been a big one. The number 25 car in the barriers, and it's all gone horribly wrong for, and you can see by the body language what they think about that. Well, he'd already been passed by the number 12 Viper of Boris de Richburg, so it's possible that he had a problem. But David Hart has had the biggest possible problem, and that car is out of the race. So the number 3 Porsche, there he is. He's had a spin of his own, following the Marcos, which is now back out after a pit stop and making its way back up the field. So whatever the problem was for Cor Euser, it's been fixed, and Harold Becker is now back out on the track and making good. But it's too late for Hart and Hazeman's.
Yeah, it was good. I was very easy on the tyres in the beginning, and then it was okay. I was just behind Duas when I came in, so it was okay till David went out and he had a flat spot, and then it was too much a flat spot, and then the tyre blew up, so he went in the wall.
Well, lucky to be able to laugh when disaster strikes. Mike Hazeman philosophical about all that, and this Lister is coming in very slowly. The body language of this car says retirement. We've seen it spin, it's been in trouble, everybody's had a little spin with it, and there does seem to be a problem with that car. No problem for number 77. This is Hans Willems in the Red Bull car. 6th overall after the pit stop, leading NGT, and that was a glimpse of the number 56 Porsche, which was pulled off the grid with gearbox problems. Now back on track after losing 40 laps and presumably just running as a test, as the Marcos continues to make up time and is about to demote Hans Willems back down to 7th place, if I am any judge. There is the move. Well, the Marcos creeping back up the leaderboard. This is good work for Marcos, recovering after what looked like a big problem earlier on. But now very much back in action, and the Lister very much out of it. That is the end of the road for Nicolas Springer. and for the number 15 Lister, and it was a brake problem indeed. They were looking into those front wheel arches earlier on. It's a brake problem. The car had become, as we saw, pretty close to undrivable, and it's now all over for one of the Lister cars, although the other one is still very much in control of this race. And there's a man who's not in control of anything. Massimo Cattori had a very early pit stop with a puncture or a tyre problem, and the 67 car, its stablemate, has had tyre problems too, so that may be the cause of a very terminal off, although he walked away unhurt. This is second place in NGT. This is Patrice Gouslard, who's taken over from Christophe Bouchou and is now running second in the class, and it's still close and they are still battling about it. Let's have a look at this, because we saw Hans Willems demoted to 7th place overall. He is the NGT leader ahead of Gouslard, who is in 2nd place. In 3rd place, and quite a way behind him, is Robert Nern, now in the 51 Pennzoil Porsche. And then the stablemate to this car, the number 53 Labra Porsche, Chirot at the wheel, in fact, is 4th, and Magnus Wallander in the number 50 Pennzoil car is next, recovering well, as we saw after a little touch and some bodywork damage very early in the race, and that's the way it looks in NGT. Vincent Voss waiting for the number 12 Viper to come in for its final pit stop, and there it is. Boris de Richborg unstrapping, and out he comes. Fuel going in, you'll notice. Driver change, takes his drink bottle with him, no seat insert, pretty much the same size and shape, these two. And there is Harold Becker up to 5th place, 6th place in the Marcos. I beg your pardon, just moving up through the field. The Marcos recovering well after starting well and then faltering slightly. Looking like its best finish for a long time, as out goes Vincent Voss. And that is the number 4 Porsche spinning. And is it recovering? Is the engine still running, or is that the end of it? No, there's flames from the exhaust. It's still going as the 11 car is scheduled in for its final stop. From 2nd place, Paul Belmondo handing over to Marc Duez. Local man, knows the circuit, probably wishes he'd taken up circuit racing a lot earlier, but still had a good time in rallying. Here is the race leader. Not yet in for his pit stop. Jamie Campbell-Walter due to hand over to Julian Bailey as Marc Duez goes back out on track. Here is the number 52 Porsche. This is Christophe Bouchou launching his final hour charge as usual. The 52 car has stopped for its 2nd time. Number 51 with Robert Nairn, and they touch as Bouchou goes past, has yet to make its pit stop and will lose more ground. And Bouchou charging after the victory as the Lister comes in for its final stop. So this is Jamie Campbell-Walter handing over to Julian Bailey. And the two drivers had a little bit of a conference at the pit stop, and it seems as though the number 14 car has got the same sort of brake problem which put the 15 car out earlier on. Julian just shutting the door there. They've had trouble with the brakes, here last year, and they're having trouble again this year. Hopefully not serious enough to cause retirement, but perhaps the final hour could be just a little bit more exciting than the middle hour under these circumstances.
Around here it's very heavy on brakes, and we had the same problem last year, so you know, I think if you got to sort of try and cool them down, and then they come in a bit more. You know, it's what it's doing, it's cooking the fluid, so hopefully we can hang in 2nd, who knows.
Well, Jamie Campbell-Walter fairly up front about that, hanging on to 2nd, and you can see the problem as the front of the car snakes. It crosses the grass and carries on, shedding gravel all over the place. Well, Julian Bailey obviously struggling to stop the Lister and being caught very rapidly indeed, very rapidly by Marc Duez, challenges him at the final corner, through the little chicane and up towards the start-finish straight they go. And look, the Viper's so close it's almost invisible, ducks out of the slipstream, and it's a very slow entry there, so you can see that Julian Bailey had to brake very early for that one, and through went Marc Duez into the lead. So this is your new race leader, Marc Duez out in front, and as Jamie Campbell-Walter predicted, the Lister is now down to second. To be quite honest, it doesn't look as though there's much Julian Bailey can do about that. In fact, he may be struggling to hang on to that position. Here's Luca Riccitelli, who is battling to hang on to the lead of NGT because Bouchou is closing in hard from behind. Belmondo looking worried. Vincent Vos has been chasing third place, but he's running out of his fuel envelope now, running outside the window, and there he is closing in on the Lister. But you could tell by the worried faces in the Belmondo pits that he might not make it on this strategy. He might yet have to come in even for a splash and dash. That's obviously on the cards, but he's pushing as hard as he can, has a stab, oh dear, locks up his brakes trying to get past. Well, it looks as though it might well be third place for Julian Bailey and Lister here, which won't damage the championship too much. In fact, it's better than the alternative, and Julian Bailey obviously struggling to keep the car on the track, never mind on the pace, and may well find that discretion is the better part of valour as the second of the Belmondo cars persecutes him in the braking zones. The Lister still fast on the straights. You can see he still opens up a gap, but then under brakes, Vincent Vos closes right up behind him. Here is another chance at the end of the front straight, or is it? The Ferrari gets in the way, and it looks as though Julian Bailey lives yet another lap in second place, but it can't go on much longer unless, of course, that Viper has to go in for fuel. Number 3 car, Wolfgang Kaufmann, looking for, is he looking for third place or fourth place? Certainly looking for the Lister. Here's Riccitelli still being hounded by Christophe Bouchou, still being caught by the number 52 car from second place. Oh, and it spins again, he's lost it again. Julian Bailey really struggling. Oh, and that is why he isn't going to go down to third place, because Vincent Vos has had to come in for fuel, as we suspected, just as Julian Bailey lost it again. So Julian Bailey might yet hang on to second place, although he has got Wolfgang Kaufmann coming after him as well, and much more of what we've just seen from the Lister, and it might actually be no points for the second weekend in a row for Julian Bailey and for Lister. That's the number 79 car, that's Giorgio Tibaldi, obviously been off and fairly hard, but he must struggle on to the end of the race now. Hardly worth stopping. We're in the closing minutes of this race. The number 11 Viper of Marc Duez is the new leader. Number 12 there is in third place after the fuel stop and looking to chase after the Lister, but really there's not enough time left to do that. So he's going to have to... Oh, and he's spun! And they've touched! Oh, they've collided! Duez up in the air! And somehow or other, number 12 has got going. He's lost a wheel. That's what it was. Marc Duez has dropped a wheel. The race is almost over. Marc Duez has dropped a wheel. The Lister is going to pass him. There it goes to retake the lead, because number 12's been in for fuel. So Julian Bailey is back out in the lead, and Marc Duez is carrying on 3 wheels. Well, he can't go into the pits now and admit defeat. So what will he do? Slow right down and creep around this racetrack and hope that the Lister laps him one more time and he gets the result. Julian Bailey just got to keep it on track now. He's almost within sight of the checkered flag, and suddenly victory has indeed been snatched from the jaws of total disaster. What an incredible upset. Vincent Vos goes in for fuel, drops out of the battle for second, and Marc Duez just drops out of the battle completely. So there he is waiting on the line for the checkered flag, and there it is. What a brilliant result for Lister after what looked like disaster. And you've got to say they owe it to Julian Bailey, who did a fantastic job in the cockpit during that final hour, kept the Lister close enough to benefit when his rivals had bad luck. That's what a real racing driver does, and Julian Bailey's drive this afternoon must be one of the best we've seen in this whole series during the last couple of seasons. Brilliant, brilliant work.
I had no front brakes, so what happened in the pit stop, they got cooked. Don't know if you saw the smoke coming off them, so when I went out they just overdone it and they had no front brakes, so I had to adjust my style accordingly. But it's okay when I was on my own, I could brake really early, but I couldn't overtake anybody. You know, they'd be letting me pass, but I just couldn't do it, and every time I tried I went off. I went off about 3 times. I didn't even know I'd won it actually. I was too busy trying to stay on.
Terrible disappointment for Belmondo, who looked like they were on for a perfect team finish in first and second, until it all went horribly wrong for them right at the very end of the race.
Yeah, everything was fine. We just asked to Mark to slow down. He had decided to slow down. He was lapping in 41s. I mean, everything was going right. I mean, we tried to push the list as much as we could on the 2 first stints so they don't go too much far away, and we hoped they might have a little problem, and it did happen, but we had a bigger one.
The result after 3 hours looks like the leaderboard after lap 1, with no trace of the drama, which launched the handicapped Lister back into the lead, right up to the top of the leaderboard with just 1 lap to go. And everyone on the podium really has ceased their lead at the top of the points table, but that inspired finish saved the Belmondo boys from disaster, and it keeps them in the title hunt as well. In NG them at the end of 3 hours, and if the race had gone another lap further, then this might well have been the other way around. But there it is, Riccitelli and the Red Bull crew take their first win of the year. Of